Hello everybody on the internet and YouTube, welcome back to my channel for our next channel and life update video here with me, Addict. So you guys would know if you saw my community post that on the 4th of July, my little baby boy, little Jelly, made his entrance into the world. You'll notice first of all that I'm not currently holding him, and that's because he is currently asleep in his swing. I meant for him to be here for this video, but then he fell asleep. So I was like, okay, well that's fine. I'll chat and then maybe at the end we'll have a little peek of the little baby. But yeah, so happy July. In Australia, July the 4th is not a special day, but for all of you Americans, he was born on the 4th of July, so he's a little Independence Day baby. And today's video, I'm going to be sharing the story of his birth. It's going to be pretty chatty, so I hope you've got a nice hot cup of tea. I've got mine. This is my Dr. Glue on tea time mug. Oh, I just realized you can't see that. There we go, Dr. Glue on tea time mug. Yeah, so I'm going to be chatting, just sharing the story of Jelly's birth and labor and all of that kind of grizzly stuff. So if this is not content you're interested in, I'm sorry. The gaming content will be back at some point in the future, but I wanted to jump on and share Aiden's birth story because it was a little not the way I planned it, that's for sure. It was quite long and stressful, and yeah, it was interesting. And I don't know, I'm the kind of person who I like to hear other people's birth stories. I looked up a lot of birth stories and birth vlogs when I was pregnant, so I thought I would jump on and share my story in case any of you are interested in hearing it. So Aiden was born, as I mentioned, on Monday the 4th of July at about 7:30 in the morning, but the labour journey for me started a few days before that. It was actually Friday morning at about 1:15 a.m, so basically like Thursday night. I woke up from my sleep and I felt like I was wetting myself, and I was like, oh gosh. Went to the loo, and it turned out that, as far as I could tell, I was having a little bit of a water breaking situation at 1:15 in the morning, as you tend to do. Now, because I had been diagnosed with a condition called polyhydramnios, you're gonna hear me talk a lot about polyhydramnios, so I might just call it poly for short. What that meant is that I had an excessive amount of amniotic fluid. And so my doctor had told me that if I saw my waters break, or I saw, you know, if I had an amniotic leak, I needed to call the hospital immediately and go in and get checked, because an excessive amount of amniotic fluid can lead to your baby being unstable, which my baby was, and basically that means that he's not sitting in the position where he's going to immediately drop and block the cervix, so there's a danger of cord prolapse where the cord comes out first and then the baby sort of comes down afterwards, blocks off the cord, and then dies. So, you know, kind of a big deal. So there I was at, yeah, 1:15 in the morning, just kind of half asleep, blinking and going, what the heck is my water breaking? Oh my God. So it took me probably 10-15 minutes to wake up enough to go, I need to call the hospital and go in, because I was very confused, because I wasn't having any contractions, I wasn't having any pain, just mild cramping, like that just felt like a period cramp or something. And the other weird thing was that the water leak, it was only a little bit and then it stopped, and I was like, ooh, I wonder if I've had a minor leak, I don't know. So eventually I called the hospital and I was like, this is my situation. The midwife said, yep, sorry, you're gonna have to come on up, I need to check you out. And I was like, okay. So I woke up my husband and off we went to the hospital. We got there at about 2 a.m. Friday morning, and the midwife checked me out, and she asked me to bring in my underwear, which had been leaked into. She smelled them and went, oh yeah, that's amniotic fluid. But then when she actually observed my cervix and did some observations there on my, you know, area, she couldn't find any further evidence of more amniotic fluid. So she couldn't actually 100% say, yes, you've had a water leak. She could say with 95% certainty that, yeah, my waters had ruptured at least slightly. Yeah, but yeah, she couldn't actually say with 100% guarantee that this had happened. So basically she said, the main thing is I can't feel a cord. Then there's no cord prolapse and your baby feels head down and engaged. So that's all good news. What we're going to do is send you home. I imagine that today your labor will really kick in, and you might even be back in, 12 to 24 hours to have your baby. And I was like, okay, oh my gosh. And she was like, oh yeah, now get as much sleep as you can, okay? And I was like, yeah, sure, right. So we got back home. I tried to go back to bed. At about 4:30 I had more leaking, and after that I was like, okay, I need to try to get some sleep. So I slept for about 2 hours from about 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. So great night's sleep there to start off my labor journey. So then throughout the day on Friday, basically I had, as I said, in the morning I had very mild period-like cramps that slowly built in intensity and frequency throughout the day. By about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we were taking the dogs for a walk and I was like cramping quite frequently, sort of every 5 to 10 minutes. And I could tell, yep, things were kicking into gear. This is all good news. Cool. Now the hospital had asked me to call them and check in at about 6 p.m. because if my waters had broken and I hadn't gone into labor after 18 hours, I think it was, there was a chance that I might have to go back into hospital, be hooked up to an IV and get antibiotics, because when your waters rupture, you are at risk of infection. So I called the hospital about 6 p.m. I said, look, yeah, I'm cramping, but that's pretty much it. There's been no other signs of labor, but do you want me to come in to get these antibiotics? And the midwife on the phone was like, well, I don't know, because we couldn't really verify that it was in fact amniotic fluid, so maybe you're better off just staying at home. We don't want you to come in and be hooked up to an IV unless you really, really have to be. And I was like, okay. So I stayed home. I went to bed that night. Just before I went to bed that night, I lost my mucus plug. TMI, but it was definitely that. And I went, okay, things are definitely, ramping up. I'd been having bloody show all day as well, which is basically the sign that your cervix is thinning out and things are getting ready to go. And then Friday night was okay, but I quickly discovered after going to bed that my cramping was worse when I was lying down. So I did manage to get about 7 or so hours of very broken sleep that night. I was waking up every sort of 15 minutes to half an hour with some of those cramps if they were particularly strong. I think I slept pretty well from about 10 p.m. till about 2 a.m. and then pretty much from 2 a.m. until morning I was in and out of sleep, just dozing, just waking up with the contractions, which were definitely building at that stage. So then I checked in with my midwife and my team and my support crew in the morning, and I said, yeah, this is where I'm at. Checked in with the hospital. I said, this is where I'm at. They said, okay, it sounds like you're still in early labor, so stay home. Hopefully things will kick into gear today. And I'm like, all right. My mum came down on Saturday, bless her, to hang out with me and keep me company, and we watched Spider-Man, the latest Spider-Man movie, really good movie by the way, and just hung out while throughout the day my contractions continued to build and get more and more intense and more frequent. They built to a point where I was having very consistent strong contractions every 5 minutes, clockwork, like 5 minute, 5 minute, 5 minute, 5 minute, contraction, 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 contraction. So I called the hospital because I had heard that if you were having contractions every 5 minutes for like an hour, you should go into hospital. So I called the hospital. I said, this is where I'm at. Apparently that's actually the rule for America, not so much Australia. So they said to me, look, honestly at this point we'd encourage you to stay home a little longer, but if you want to come in and be checked, you're more than welcome to come in and be checked and we can give you an update on where you're at. So I was like, yes, I would like to come in and be checked, because the contractions at that point were, at least in my mind, getting pretty strong, and I was starting to get pretty tired. At that point, you know, if we consider that labor sort of started like around Friday morning, this is Saturday night, and I'm going like, yeah, I'm feeling pretty tired. So I went into hospital to get checked, and unfortunately I did jump the gun a little bit. I was only 1.5 centimeters dilated and about 50% effaced, so my cervix had thinned to about 50%, is what that means. And basically they said, yeah, like things are going along, all the signs are good, but at this stage we don't need you here. What we look for in Australia is 3 to 4 contractions, strong contractions, within 10 minutes. When you get to that point, ring us again and come back. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm so sorry to have bothered you. I felt so embarrassed, and I was like, I really thought you would want me to stay in and have this baby, but they didn't, so okay. So I went back home again, and again they told me get as much sleep as you can. However, as I mentioned, my contractions when I was lying down were 20 times more painful than when I was up or sitting. So I lay down in bed from about 10 p.m. till about 1:15. May have gotten a couple of snippets of sleep, but I was having contractions every 5 minutes that woke me up. So, you know. By 1:15 I was done with being in bed, so I got up, I went to the living room, and I hung out in the living room all night. I put on some YouTube videos, I bounced on my bouncy ball, sat on the couch, I got up, I walked around, I was moaning and breathing through my contractions, and I was starting to feel quite exhausted. It was a very emotional night. Everything's always worse at nighttime, you know. I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but when things are going on in your life and you're feeling, you know, in pain or tired or emotional at nighttime, it's always like 10 times worse. At least that's what it's like for me. I don't know if you can relate to that. So I was, at one point I went into shock, I think. I just started trembling pretty much uncontrollably after a particularly strong contraction that I had. And so at that point, I think that was around 3 or 4 in the morning, maybe 3:30, I decided to get into the bathtub and sit in the bath for a little while. At 4 o'clock, my husband woke up, realized that I wasn't in bed, and came to find me in the bathtub, just sort of moaning and breathing and trying to deal with my pain. I was, of course, sorry, throughout the night, I was taking Panadol and I was using like heat packs and hot water bottles to try to manage the pain as well. But otherwise I hadn't had any sort of real pain relief. So I was just breathing and using heat to try to get through this. So he got up, found me in the bathtub, kept me company. He just sat on the floor and held my hand, which was nice. And then after that, he was like, let's watch a movie. So we put on Star Wars episode 4. Here's a little clip of us at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning watching Star Wars. And yeah, so I tried my best to get whatever sleep I could. I was literally, after I was sitting on the couch for a while, I got uncomfortable. I decided to sit on the floor for a while. I had my neck pillow on, like an airplane neck pillow, and I was trying to just like doze in between my contractions because they were, at that point, they weren't coming every 5 minutes anymore. But what was happening is that I'd have like 1, 2, 3, pretty much all in a row, and then nothing for like another 6 or 7 minutes, and then I'd have like 1 and then a break, and then 2 and then a break, and then 3 and then a break. So they weren't consistent, but they were painful. And yeah, so it got to the morning, and by that stage I was in tears. I was in a lot of pain and completely exhausted. I was so tired and I was so scared at that point because I was so unsure of what was going on with my body. Like, I was so frustrated because I hadn't gone into that like full active labor yet, and I desperately wanted to go to the hospital. I desperately wanted to go to the hospital and be admitted. I wanted to be there amongst medical staff. I wanted to be looked after. I wanted to get some pain relief. I wanted to be taken care of. Sorry, yes, I'm like almost crying right now because yeah, I'd been in labor at that point for over 2 days and I was tired. So I called the hospital. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning, I think, that I rang, and I explained my situation. I cried on the phone to the midwife and I was like, I'm so tired and I don't know if I could like hold out and wait longer, and I'm frustrated and I want to be seen by a doctor. I just want a doctor to like see me and look after me. And she was like, okay, no, I hear you, I understand. Why don't you come on up in about an hour and a half, because I'm not sure what time the doctor's going to be here this morning, but she should be here by 9:30, 10. So why don't you come up around 9:30, 10 and we'll have a look at you. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. So I took a shower and the shower was really nice. And then off we went to the hospital again, 3rd time in 3 days. And when we got there, it was 9:30. And apparently in the interim between me calling and then me getting there, all hell had broken loose in the hospital, and like 2 or 3 other women had come in that needed immediate attention because they were like having a baby and needed C-sections and all this sort of stuff. So unfortunately we were actually left waiting in the waiting room for an hour before before someone was able to see us. Paul was with me, my husband obviously, and then about halfway through our wait, my midwife, so throughout my pregnancy I was working with a student midwife, so she was in her final year of midwifery, which in Australia is a full like university degree. So yeah, her name was Kyla. She was amazing. I love her so much. I miss talking to her every day. Anyway, so she came up to keep me company as well, and to be with me and to lend her opinion and, you know, advice on everything. So finally about 10:30 a.m. I got admitted to a room and a midwife checked me. She said I had progressed to about 3 centimeters dilated, maybe a 3 and a bit, and about 75% effaced. So my cervix had thinned to about, you know, only 25% of it less, but my contractions were not consistent with having 3 in 10 minutes. They were sometimes 3 or 4 in 10 minutes, but then they were sometimes not, as I sort of explained. And so the midwife sort of said to me, look, at this stage, again, I'm sorry, but it's, you know, probably better for you to go back home. And I really didn't want to go back home. And I was on the verge of, you know, just bursting into tears, so I wasn't really saying much, but, you know, my husband was sort of saying, like, you know, you're managing okay, like, we could go back home, we can wait longer. And Kyla, my midwife, was saying, you know, it's really up to you, where do you think you'll be more comfortable? And I sort of looked at her, I was like, I really think I'd be more comfortable here at the hospital, but, you know, if they can't admit me, then they can't admit me. Thankfully, at that point, the doctor who I was meant to see came out of delivering babies and came in to see me. Her name was Julie. I don't know what her surname is. I'm just going to call her Dr. Julie for the rest of this video, because Dr. Julie was my hero. She came in and she asked me, you know, what had been going on, and I explained that I'd been in labor for like 2.5 days. I hadn't slept, I was really tired, and she said, okay. And then she asked me about my pregnancy in general, and I told her, you know, that I had polyhydramnios and that otherwise the pregnancy had been really smooth and straightforward. And she said, okay. She had a look at me, she confirmed, yep, you're about 3 and a bit centimeters dilated, blah, 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 and your waters are like bulging, ready to burst, but obviously they're still intact. So whatever leak that I had on the Friday morning was obviously just something minor, like a minor, what's called like a hindwaters rupture. If it in fact was. I was pretty sure it was. The doctors and nurses weren't convinced. Whatever. Beside the point. But Dr. Julie looked at the midwives and said, I think she needs to stay. She did say to me, like, here are your options. She said, you can go back home. You can wait. You can keep, you know, letting your body do its thing. Or you can stay and we can look at doing an ARM, which is an artificial membrane rupture, or rupture of membranes, whatever order of words that's meant to be, where they break your waters for you. Because basically she said, you know, at this point we need to really be conscious of your fatigue levels. And I was like, no kidding. She was like, you know, you've been at this for days, you're tired, you're not getting any rest, and we need to be conscious of that because there's still a long way to go. So it's really up to you. And I sort of looked at her and I said, I understand that. I would rather stay. What, in your professional opinion, is the best course of action? And she said, I think you should stay. I think you should, you know, you're at 3 centimeters, your waters could break any minute. And, you know, because you do have polyhydramnios, that's still a risk, you know, of cord prolapse and everything. So I think you should stay where we can keep an eye on you. And then maybe, you know, we can even help your labor along. And I almost melted in relief. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Dr. Julie. So apparently the hospital was literally full. They didn't have a room for me at that point, but they had a few people who were ready to be discharged and head home that day. So some of the midwives, as well as Dr. Julie, took off to go and discharge some people so that I could be admitted and given a room, which happened not too long after. They also gave me some tramadol, which is like some form of pain relief, which was meant to hopefully help me to get some rest, and it did. So after we got shown into our room, I basically just hopped into bed with the bed inclined so it wasn't too painful for me to lie there. I had my painkillers and I tried my best to sleep. I got about 3 or so hours of broken rest. Hospitals aren't really very restful places because there's people coming in all the time and like moving around, and midwives were coming in to like check on me, and there was noises and beeping and things. So I tried my best to get some rest. About 3 p.m. I got out of bed and I got into the hospital shower. and that shower was the best shower I've ever had in my life. It was the best pain relief that I'd had pretty much in 2.5 days. Something about it, I don't know, it just was magic. And I was in there for an hour. A midwife came in when I was like halfway through my shower wanting to talk to me, and Paul, my husband, was just like, sorry, she's in the shower. Like, she was like, it's okay, I'll come back later. So yeah, I was in the shower for about an hour, and then the midwife came back and wanted to chat with me, and I can't remember what her name was, but she just said, you know, Dr. Julie's just finishing up her shift for today, and she wanted to check in with you and see how you're going and what you're thinking. And I was like, honestly, I haven't thought about it at all. I've just been trying to sleep. Can you check back with me in like half an hour? She was like, no worries at all. Like, let me, yeah, we'll check back in at about 5 o'clock and see what you want to do. But I think, you know, it would be a good idea to maybe do this ARM. So I thought about it long and hard. I talked to Paul about it. I talked to Kyla about it. I talked to my mum about it, and I decided that they were probably right. And we needed to rupture my waters in order for my labour to progress, because it seemed to me that things were just not progressing the way they should be. But I was also so tired and terrified of being in more pain that I decided to ask for an epidural. In my original birth plan, I had written that I would see how I would go without an epidural, and I would hold out for as long as I could, and if the pain got unmanageable, I would ask for one. That was always my plan going into giving birth to a baby, because I understand, you know, there are some risks associated with epidural, and I wanted to just, I'd never given birth before. I didn't know how painful it was going to be or not be. I didn't know how I was going to handle it. But because I was so tired, I realized that if I wanted to be able to give birth to my child, like physically just do it, I needed rest. I needed rest more than anything else. And the midwives all thought that was a very wise choice. I cried and I was like, you know, I didn't want to necessarily do this, and they were like, no, don't you feel guilty? Like, you have been in labor for 2.5 days, almost 3 days. Do not feel guilty. You have done the work. Your body is tired. You need to rest. And I figured that if I hadn't made that decision, I probably would have ended up with a C-section, because I was just too tired. I would have been too tired to give birth. About 6:30 on the Sunday night, this is where we're at right now, by the way, it's Sunday. 6:30 on the Sunday night, they broke my waters, and my gosh, was there a lot of water. It just kept going and 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 going. The anesthesiologist, one of those words, the person who did the epidurals, her name was Angela. She was lovely. She was on call that night, and so they called her and said, yeah, we've got a lady who wants an epidural. Come in when you're ready, basically, and we'll do this, we'll sort this out. So unfortunately, in between my ARM and the anaesthetist getting there was a solid like hour and a half wait. And oh my gosh, once they broke my waters, did my contractions ramp up. They really got very intense and very frequent very quickly. I went into shock again. I was trembling, I vomited. It was not a pretty sight. I was moaning, I was crying, I was in pain. And I think, honestly, I probably would have been able to get through it if it hadn't been for the fact that I'd already been in labor for like 2.5 days. Because yeah, that was intense. But luckily, eventually, Angela arrived and the epidural went in, and it was completely successful. I'd had a lot of stories from the other mums in my mum's class of epidurals only being like half effective, only working on one side, or having like a dead spot where they could still feel things. Mine was perfect. I really impressed myself, surprised and impressed myself by holding completely still the whole time she was doing the procedure, which was really hard when I was contracting every like minute or two. But I held still, she did it, she was awesome. The pain relief kicked in about 10 minutes later, and I was like, oh, I was in heaven. I was in complete heaven. I was completely numb from the waist down. I couldn't even move my legs for a while. They had me hooked up to a monitoring machine and an IV at that point. But the baby was happy, his heart rate and everything was fine. So everything looked good. And I, at last, was able to get some rest. So from about when they checked me, Oh, I forgot to say they checked me again at about 6 p.m. before they broke my waters, and I was still like a 3.5 dilation, and I was like, yeah, no, we need to get these waters broken. So they checked me then, and then they left me to sleep. They came back in at 11 p.m. and checked me, and in the space of those 3-4 hours, I'd gotten to like a 6.5-7 centimeters dilation, fully effaced, baby fully engaged. Fast forward another 4 hours to 3 a.m. and I was completely dilated. Baby was deep in the birth canal, and we were like, whoa, okay, that was quick. My midwife for the night was a beautiful woman by the name of Kate, and she was coming in to check on me hourly. So I say I got sleep. I was being woken up every like hour, half hour, whatever, but it's okay. Yeah, so she was coming in to check on me all night, and when she came in at 3 a.m. and did the full check, she was like, this is amazing, like kudos to you for like knowing what you needed, because this rest has done you so much good. Do you feel ready to push out this baby? And I was like, no. Oh my God, are you serious? Like now? And she's like, well, what we can do, because so your epidural is still fully like effective, right? And I was like, yeah, pretty much. Like I was starting to get a little bit of sensation back in my left hip, which turned out to be quite painful throughout the rest of the process, but that's okay. I was like, yeah, no, it's still pretty much a complete block. And she was like, well, what we'll do then, let's leave you another hour. Let's let your baby come down further. Let's keep up the epidural meds and just let things, you know, progress for another hour. And then we'll start pushing around 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. How does that sound? And I was like, that sounds good. Give me another hour. Yep, I could really use that. So an hour later, about 4 a.m., 4:15 a.m., she came back. We had a chat. I was shaking, uncontrollably shaking in anticipation. We woke up my husband. We called in my student midwife again, Kyla. She'd gone home in between. Like she went home at about 6-ish the night before, and she said, call me when you're ready to give birth. So we called her and she was like, I'm coming in. Bless her. I love midwives. Oh my gosh. And then at about 4:30 in the morning, we started working on some practice pushes. It took 3 hours for me to push my baby out. The first hour or so, or like definitely the first half hour, was honestly pretty relaxed. We weren't pushing it too hard. We were just like getting in the flow of pushing. They were all telling me that my pushes were like really, really effective, really, really strong, really, really good, and it wouldn't take too long at all for me to give birth if I kept that up. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. He was in a good position the whole time. His heart rate was fine the whole time, but oh my God, was it hard work to get that baby out. I want to give a massive kudos and shout out to any woman watching this who's pushed out a baby, because hot damn, that's hard work. We let the epidural wear off completely for pushing as well, which meant I was back to full sensation of pain. We tried moving me around into a few different positions to get the pushing working better and faster. It just made it worse. I lost my mind at one point. I was like screaming and saying, I can't do this. And my midwives were so amazing and so patient, just helping me pull my head back in, refocus. We gave me an extra shot of painkillers at one point because I had completely lost it, and we were just like, okay, let's do a shot of epidural and calm her down. And then at about 7, so about half an hour before he was actually born, my angel, my hero, Dr. Julie, arrived for work. And she came in because they were a little concerned at that point. It had been, you know, 2.5 hours of pushing, and it seemed like we had stalled, and we weren't making the progress that we should be making. He was, you know, really sort of doing this like forward back kind of thing, and we couldn't seem to get him crowning. So Dr. Julie came in, she had a look at me, and she realized that there was like some type of band or like tight ring that was stopping him from coming further. So she applied a little pressure to that during my next round of contractions and pushing, and that band kind of gave way. And then a little bit after that, we were really kicking again. He was really coming, and Dr. Julie was absolutely amazing. She really pushed me to give that little bit extra with every single push. She really pushed me to keep going, to make it harder, to make it stronger. And it's thanks to her. It is honestly thanks to Dr. Julie that my son was born. So 7:34 a.m. Monday, 4th of July, out he came, screaming so loud. They put him on my chest, and I cannot describe to you the feeling of your baby being put onto your chest. It was the most intense and wonderful feeling that I've ever had or experienced in my entire life. Yeah, it was insane. It was absolutely insane. He was actually not as big as we had thought. I'd been told that he was in like the 95th percentile of growth and would be a very, very big baby, probably over 4 kilos or close to 10 pounds. He was actually about 3.5 or 3.6 kilos. He was very tall though. He was 52.5 centimeters. I don't know what that is in inches. I'll put it on screen. Yeah, he was tall, he was lanky, but he wasn't actually that big. So that was nice. He did have a big head. They measured his head and they were like, yeah, no, he's got a big head. And I was like, yeah, I felt that. But otherwise, they put him on my chest, they let him suckle and just snuggle for like an hour. Dr. Julie had to go home, bless her, because she'd been on call that night and she was done, so she went home. And I gave her a big thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping me have my baby. I need to send her some flowers or something, seriously. I need to send them all flowers. Then they cleaned him up, weighed him, inspected him, gave him his first injections. Pretty much soon after that, I was getting up to take a shower. The epidural was, as I said, it had mostly worn off by that point. I was still pretty wobbly on my legs. But I got up and took a shower. They have chairs in the showers at hospital, so I kind of just sat there and was like, I just had a baby. That was intense. We decided on his name, which was Aiden Michael. Aiden we picked because it was the only name that my husband liked. That was literally it. Michael, his second name, was actually my choice, and it's actually named after a very dear friend of mine, my best friend, who passed away back in 2017. Yeah, he'd been my best friend for quite a few years, and he had medical conditions, which unfortunately, yeah, he passed away from, but I wanted to name my son after him and give him part of that, I don't know, legacy, because Michael would have been my unofficial, or Aiden's unofficial uncle. He would have been, you know, that guy who was over all the time and was basically Uncle Michael, but not actually related. So yeah, that was how we picked the name. I did have to get a few stitches. I had a very small internal tear, which we thought was probably most likely due to that ring, that band that had to be sort of snapped in order to let the baby through. So very, very, very small though. It only took Dr. Julie like a couple of minutes to stitch me up. I had no external tearing whatsoever. And yeah, basically we were in the hospital for a couple of days working on breastfeeding, and then we came home on the Tuesday afternoon. So really, yeah, we weren't in the hospital for that long, to be honest. We came home the Tuesday afternoon and have been home ever since. So that is the story of Aiden's birth, and my recovery's been pretty good. My nether regions, for want of a better word, I don't know what else to call them for YouTube, but they have pretty much healed up like completely. Like I have very little pain or discomfort down there at all anymore. For the first couple of days I had plenty of pain and discomfort. Also, for those mums out there who have given birth to a child, that first poop after giving birth, holy crap, is that the scariest thing you've ever done in your life or what? But yeah, so that all healed up really well. Unfortunately, I did have a slight complication, which was a mystery infection somewhere. We still don't really know where it was or what caused it, but so we got home on the Tuesday, as I said. On the Thursday, I started to feel quite unwell. I took a nap and I woke up with a temperature of almost 38 degrees Celsius, which isn't great. And then I smelled really bad also, and I sort of Googled my symptoms and it pointed towards some type of infection. So we had to go back to the hospital Thursday night for me to get checked, which we did, and I got put on some antibiotics, which I've now finished, and they definitely seem to have cleared up whatever it was. They had a look at my surgical site and that was all clean and fine, so we think it was actually maybe something internal. I personally am wondering if it was related to the hindwaters rupture that I had on the Friday morning, that the doctors and nurses weren't quite sure if it was or if it wasn't a rupture. But apparently that can lead to an increased risk of infection if you do have a minor rupture like that. So I'm kind of putting 2 and 2 together here and going, maybe I should have gone in for antibiotics, you know, 18 hours after that happened, but all's well that ends well. And yeah, otherwise I definitely have had a couple days of baby blues, which I think I'm mostly through now. They hit Saturday. So gave birth Monday, it was Saturday that my baby blues hit. And I had a rough couple of days of feeling extremely emotional and overwhelmed and weepy and just panicky about the fact that I had this child and anxious, and I still am a little bit, but I think now it's a lot more like under control. It's a lot less intense, and it's more just like, okay, I have a baby and I really don't know much about what I'm doing. I'm kind of just winging this and trying to make it up as we go along here, and I'm a little overwhelmed and scared, but I'm okay. I think we're gonna get there. But yeah, so sleep-wise, we are doing well, I want to say. Touch wood. My desk is made of wood, so touch wood. He's a good sleeper overnight. He wakes up every 3 hours or so, obviously, for food, because that's what babies do. But he is easy to put back down at night time, which is the main thing. The first night he was at home, he was not. I was up from pretty much 10 p.m. till 3 a.m. with him. He was cluster feeding, he was not wanting to sleep, he was just doing baby things. But after that first really rough night, the next night was a little better, the next night was a little better again, and pretty much since then he's been really good at nighttime. So yeah, he usually wakes up around 10, has some milk, then he'll go straight back to sleep. He'll wake up around like 1 or 2 in the morning, have some milk, go straight back to sleep, and then he'll wake up around 5 or so in the morning, 4 or 5, have some milk, go straight back to sleep, and then wake up again around 7. So, or yeah, 7:30. So as I said, pretty good. I'm getting enough sleep, I think. I want to say enough sleep. I'm getting about 6 to 7 hours sort of broken up throughout the night, and then occasionally I'm having an afternoon siesta as well. So sleep-wise, we're doing okay for now. And I understand things are likely to change. So that's but yeah, that's the update. That's the birth story. And then bump-wise, just to show you guys, my belly has like really come back down quite quickly, quicker than I expected it to. So right now, if I've still got like a little bit of a rounded tum. So this is, I'm 11 days postpartum, and yeah, it's pretty good. I've got a real mum tum, like a real intense mum tum. There's a lot of extra skin there, and it's all covered in stretch marks, like quite significantly. If you are someone who got lots of stretch marks on their tummy when they had babies, I feel you. I've already dropped over half of the baby weight that I put on throughout my pregnancy, which was a lot. I put on a lot of weight while I was pregnant, but I think most of it was just that polyhydramnios fluid. I think, yeah, most of it, I lost most of that weight when that came out. I also forgot to say when Aiden was born, he came out in a tsunami as well. There was even more water, just whoosh. Oh, so much water that came out. So, yeah. Alright, here's the baby. I don't know why he looks so red in the face on this camera. He's just had milk and spat up a bit and had his nappy changed. I was gonna say like diaper, and then I changed halfway to nappy, and then it came out as dummy. But yeah, here's the little man, a couple of days old. He's like, whoa mum, these lights are pretty bright. He's currently got his grumpy old man face on, which is fairly standard. One of the most surprising things about Aiden is that he actually looks just like me. It's probably hard for you guys to see, but he has my nose. When he came out and they put him on me, I was like, oh my god, it's me. Because yeah, our newborn photos looked very similar. I think as he gets older, he'll come more into his own, but this is my nose right here, my little piggy nose. He's got, his eyes are definitely from my side of the family as well. They remind me a lot of myself and also my dad. He's a good papa. Give him a little cuddle. His chin might be my side of the family as well, I'm not sure yet. So yeah, unfortunately my poor husband's like, oh, he doesn't look like me at all. And I was like, I'm sure he will look more like you as he gets older. But yeah, he's a little clone of his mum. And yeah, so he's a very good feeder. He's very efficient at feeding actually. It only takes him sort of 10-15 minutes to satisfy himself completely. As I already said, he's a pretty good sleeper. He has been a little cranky the last couple of days. I think he's got a little bit of a cold. He sounds a little congested. Definitely not surprising whatsoever when you're a new baby adjusting to life outside the womb. I forgot to mention today my husband had to go downtown, so it's been the first day of just me and the baby. And yes, I'm one anxious mummy, but so far so good. I think we're gonna take a little walk now. He doesn't like his pram very much, so I'm working on getting him used to it. He loves his car seat, just not the actual pram. I don't know, it's kind of weird. But yeah, here he is. So one 9-month, 10-month journey later, and a 3-day epic labor and 3 hours of pushing, and I got this little bundle of fun. I'm really excited for him to get a little bit older and stop frowning at me every time he looks at me. I think he has smiled at me once, but like, yeah, really looking forward to seeing him grow, get a little bigger, a little older. And for the next few weeks, I'm gonna be full-time just mummying, learning how to take care of him. And then at some stage in the future, we might come back with some actual video game content. I haven't touched a video game since he was born, so that might be nice. I've been watching a lot of video games on YouTube though. But yeah, so right now I'm gonna leave it here, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, leave any comments that you have down below. And if you would like to see more, you would hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Aiden probably won't be in a lot of other videos because my husband's not super comfortable with him being significantly online, but I'll give you guys sneak peeks every now and then. I figured today would be a good day to give you guys a little sneak peek. But yeah, right now he's still very much a newborn, so not much to see apart from a scrunchy little red face. What you doing, Aiden? What are you doing? Alright guys, I'm gonna leave it there. Take care, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.